As we step into the new year, it's the perfect time to reflect on some of the most memorable moments from the past year. Today, we're revisiting the best clips of Labour MPs being called out, challenged, and roasted for their actions and statements. These moments sparked widespread debate, garnered millions of views, and became instant classics among political enthusiasts. From fiery parliamentary exchanges to public takedowns that left audiences speechless, these clips capture the essence of holding power to account. It's a collection of the boldest, sharpest, and most memorable moments that truly defined 2024. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we dive into a year's worth of political fireworks. Because accountability never gets old.
So I think the package as a whole is one that I understand the farming community are not happy with, but I think it is against that financial problem that we inherited.
So they're wasting their time?
Well, they're absolutely got the right to come and protest, and they're clearly...
But they're not going to change your mind?
Well, I think
collective mind?
The Chancellor is having to make difficult decisions, and she set those out in the budget on the 30th of October.
Even though you previously promised before you were elected that you wouldn't do this?
I'm not sure we particularly set out a promise around this issue.
You did.
Well, that's not my understanding.
Well, you did.
OK, well, it's not my understanding. And
so you broke your promise?
I think the Chancellor's been very clear that she is not breaking promises that she made in the manifesto.
But you promised before the election that you wouldn't do this, specifically this. Steve Reid promised actually last December that you wouldn't do this, and you have. So you've broken your promise.
Well, I don't accept that.
OK, just looking at my notes in a little bit more detail, and it was actually last November, forgive me, not last December, when Steve Reid had said purposefully that he would not axe agricultural policy, property relief, that tax loophole that we're talking about today. So you did say that you wouldn't do it.
Well,
and you have.
Can I just say I'm a Home Office Minister?
Yeah, but you should be sat here this morning, and he isn't, and you've got collective responsibility. You're representing the government this morning. You promised that you wouldn't do this, and you have.
But today we're making a big announcement about police reform.
And we'll come to that. What's important today is that 40,000 farmers are going to be on the streets of London because you made a promise to them ahead of the election that you wouldn't you wouldn't put this tax in place, and you have.
Right, OK, so I think it's really important to recognise today that the protests are taking place. The farmers are making their case to Parliament, to MPs, and I'm sure all MPs and ministers will be listening very carefully to what they have to say. But it has to be seen against the backdrop we inherited in July, where the public finances were in a terrible state and difficult decisions had to be taken.
Of course, but you knew that. You knew that before you took charge.
I'm not sure we did know that.
And 9 billion of that 22 billion was as a result of the money that you gave to doctors and other public sector workers. So we need to bear that in mind. But this is a government that makes promises that it won't keep.
We did need to raise taxes in this budget to put our public finances on a sound trajectory.
Of taxes. It's the biggest tax-raising budget since 1993. It's gigantic. And you said before the election no plans to raise taxes, or the PM did, beyond the 8 billion that you had earmarked. So a lot of people out there are going to be quite shocked today.
Well, in the decisions that we've made in the budget today, I accept that this is a big and a substantial budget.
But it wasn't the budget that I was. It wasn't the budget straight with them.
It wasn't the budget that I was expecting to deliver when I became Chancellor on the 5th of July. I didn't think that any government would be so reckless to have £22 billion of unfunded
You've lifted taxes by 40 billion.
I absolutely recognise that. In our manifesto, we had commitments of $8.5 billion. In addition, as I said, there's a £22 billion black hole which recurs every year.
Even if you accept the 22 billion black hole, 8 billion of that is because you decided to settle public sector pay disputes. Are you telling me, seriously, that you did not have an inkling before the general election that you might have to find billions of pounds to settle those pay disputes? And why didn't you level with the British public about that?
The previous government set the remit for the pay review bodies, the independent pay review bodies, and astonishingly, and we did not know this, and you did not know this either, they hadn't set an affordability criteria for the pay review bodies. Two of the pay review bodies, on defence and education, had already reported before before the general election was called, and the previous government sat on that information.
Okay.
So these were inherited pressures that the previous government had stacked up.
Wes Streeting told me repeatedly before the general election, when I kept saying to him, the NHS is going to need more funding, he repeatedly kept saying, funding is not the answer, we're going to get it through growth. You have just announced £22.6 billion in extra day-to-day spending for the NHS. You just were not straight with the British people, and they will see through this. You were not straight.
We announced in the general election campaign that there would be an immediate injection of cash.
It was a
into
few
our
billion
national,
pounds which you had costed.
Into
this
our
is
national health service.
£22.6 billion.
Chancellor, had not committed the money for it.
Are you honestly saying that you have a democratic mandate for the measures that you have announced today? Tens of billions of pounds in increased spending and tens of billions of pounds of tax rises, none of which is in this document. You have a democratic mandate for this.
The first line of the first step in our manifesto was to return stability to our economy. That is the most important thing that I had to do as Chancellor. And we do have a mandate for bringing that stability back to the economy.
I think there'll be a lot of people thinking that they voted for you and you have just done the biggest tax and spend budget that we have seen for decades, and that is not what they signed up for.
There were two choices that I had to make today as Chancellor of the Exchequer. The first was whether I was going to be open and honest.
That, though? Can you see that the public might feel cheated?
Well,
even if there's a reason, you've explained the reasons. Can you see how it looks?
I think the public know the state that the economy was in and the state that our public services were in and the damage that the previous government did to our public finances.
Can you see that people might feel like you've broken their trust?
And the first commitment we made was to bring stability back to the economy. And if I had swept this all under the carpet, I would not have been able to bring that stability back to the economy.
In the manifesto,
and it was stability that the last government forfeited, which sent mortgage rates through the roof.
In the manifesto, you criticised the Conservatives for taking the tax burden to a 70-year high. What is it now at the end of this Parliament after your budget? What will it be?
I'm going to be really straight with people. The tax burden overall goes up. But we've made decisions.
From where?
It's the highest burden
ever.
Of tax. I recognise that. But the previous government
of GDP against 36.4%, which you've been very critical about.
Well, the last government, they increased taxes, but public services got worse. We will improve our public services with the commitments we've made around the National Health Service and schools today, but we have asked the wealthiest in our society and business to pay a bit more, whilst sticking to our manifesto commitment not to increase taxes that working people pay.
I've got that manifesto commitment right here, and it says the Conservatives have raised the tax burden. We will ensure taxes on working people kept as low possible. Labour will not increase taxes on working people. We will not increase NI, the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax, or VAT. Employers, meanwhile, are paying £25 billion of tax on national insurance. It's a broken manifesto.
Well, we've got a Cabinet Minister here, Lisa Nandy, feeling utterly betrayed and clearly mentally close to the edge, lots of farmers, because of the situation before you came into government, and now you're going to include many family farm estates in inheritance tax.
Yeah, well, look, it hurts to hear that, and I genuinely don't, my heart does go out to the gentleman...
Gareth,
Gareth in beautiful North Wales there. I have members of my family who are farmers, I have constituents who are farmers, but the reality is what we've done is we've made sure that any inheritance tax up to £1 million will be estates up to £1 million will be protected, with exceptions as well up to £3 million. One of the challenges that we know has existed for farmers, particularly young farmers, is that you've got very wealthy individuals who've bought up large amounts of agricultural land in order to avoid inheritance tax, which has pushed up land prices, which has also increased the pressure on farmers. We're not just taking this decision lightly, but what we are doing alongside that is introducing a new deal for farmers. Part of that is resolving the red tape issues with the EU so that farmers are better protected and supported. We're also introducing schemes across government to make sure that we're using our purchasing power, which is considerable, to support British farming. There are lots of things that we're doing to protect farmers. And I would just say to Gareth, I appreciate I'm not going to win him over on this programme, but do judge us by our actions, judge us by how you feel in 5 years' time.
Well, Gareth, do you want to respond?
I'm judging you by your actions already, with the promises that came and what you've delivered. This is going to be the last nail in the agricultural coffin. This country is going to need farmers once, twice or 3 times every day. Food security should be at the top. You know, you should be looking at investing into agriculture to build the better Britain on our bellies, making sure the next generation has healthy, nutritional food. But what you're doing is you're going to push people out to the industry. And my family's been on this land for 375 years. It breaks my heart to think that I could be the last generation here. I want to pass this down to my boys and make sure that they can make a living.
Right.
You're taking that away from me,
Gareth,
and away from thousands of farmers in the United Kingdom.
Before I
Shame on you.
get Lisa to respond on that final point, particularly shame on you, Gareth, how much support, is there widespread support for this strike that you are joining?
Unbelievable, and it's not just widespread. I've got quite a big social media following, and a lot of people have been on board this morning, and a lot of the general public know there's going to be food inflations around the corner, and the poorer people, the people that Labour should be protecting, are the ones that won't be able to afford the food, because we're going to have to put a 20% hike on our foods.
All right, well, let me
get... They have to listen.
Yes.
They have to listen for once
Wow.
to the people that are on the coalface. Don't do what Margaret Thatcher did to the miners. Protect your farmers going forward. We need you to steer our agricultural sector for food security, to make sure we can feed the poorer people in our society.
All right, Gareth, let Lisa...
Too late.
Right, well, that is a pretty impassioned plea to you there, and shame on you.
It absolutely is. And Gareth, can I just say to you that, first of all, we did introduce a funding in the budget that is the biggest amount of funding ever committed by government for food security and nature, which we think will help significantly. But second of all, I would just say this, that those comments that you alluded to that were made by somebody who was last a Labour advisor when I was a teenager, I think are absolutely abhorrent. I come from a mining community. The damage that Margaret Thatcher did to our community, willfully and vindictively inflicted on us, we're still dealing with today. We would never seek to visit that on anybody. This is about trying to get our country back on track. We have inherited a difficult situation. You've just heard the opposition spokesperson telling you that he could find £8 billion worth of savings, but nowhere near the £22 billion black hole that we've inherited just in this year alone. We've got to start turning that around. We've got to do it in order to support people like you. And we will listen, and we will...
Why didn't you invite Elon Musk? You're desperate to get a company which sacks its employees by Zoom, but you're stiffy about the biggest car maker in the world because he put something on social media you didn't like.
Look, I'm not going to comment on particular invitations from particular personnel.
Come on. Elon Musk is not some odd invitation. It is Elon Musk, biggest car maker in the world, richest man in the world. Why didn't you invite him?
Look, I'm not going to comment on the reasons for any specific person, but I can tell you we have 300 of the most significant investors, business figures, people who can bring significant amounts of capital to the UK, big names, things that will make a big difference to working people's lives, and that's the criteria.
You're happy to talk to me about DP World, who sacks their workers. You're happy to invite the Saudis, who authorise the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and they get the red carpet. Why isn't Musk being invited?
Well, I'm not going to comment.
This is you in opposition, isn't it, again?
No, not at all. This is about who can bring the kind of investments that will make the biggest difference to the UK, to working people's lives. The fact that we have, I think, in 100 days...
Musk hasn't got a bob or two that he could put in a car into Britain.
Well, look, the criteria and the selection, this is a summit. I know that everyone wants to come. I do understand that. Not everyone can come, and I don't think it would be right to go through the individual decisions for individual people, but this is about what will make the biggest difference.
Look, you understand how weird this sounds. You want people to come and invest in Britain. You want people to bring their money. Yet the one person who probably has got more money to burn and would probably like to invest in Britain, in fact, he says so publicly when he didn't get the invitation, you're deciding he's not good enough. For what reason?
No, look, if people have an investment proposition for the UK, of course, I will talk to them about it. I'm not going to go through... Look, thousands of people, Trevor, wanted to come to this summit.
Come
on. Of course they did.
Elon Musk is not thousands of people.
Well, look, I'll simply say that the people coming, you'll see the scale of the investments, you'll see the opportunities for the UK, you'll see the kind of quality and depth of the engagement this new government has. And I think to individually talk about a certain person here or there, look, that's not right on them, let alone